Space exploration is hard. Russia's Luna 25 spacecraft was poised to beat India's Chandrayaan-3 and land near the moon's south pole on August 21, 2 days before the Indian spacecraft. However, in a stunning turn of events, Russia's space agency Roscosmos lost communication with Luna 25 on August 19, and the spacecraft switched to an off-design orbit the next day, which caused it to crash into the moon's surface. Chandrayaan-3 is now on track to land on the moon in 2 days' time on August 23. I hope it succeeds. The whole of India hopes it succeeds. The Chandrayaan-3 mission is vital for India from a long-term geopolitical perspective, and so is India's space program. Please subscribe and let's find out why. And for those of you who wish to serve the nation in the same way the ISRO scientists and engineers do, I have something for you later in the video. So like I said, space exploration is really hard. There were 80 moon missions between 1958 and 1970. Out of these, 46 failed with a success rate of 42%. There have been 39 soft landing attempts on the moon thus far, out of which 18 have failed with a success rate of just 53%. Russia, which includes the erstwhile USSR, has attempted 60 moon missions thus far, of which 38 have ended in failure with a success rate of just 37%. Space is hard and it's expensive, which brings us to the question of why nations invest so much of their hard-earned money into what some people claim is a frivolous venture. For example, in 1966, the US spent 4.41% of its entire national budget on NASA. And this applies even more to India. Why does a poor, low-income nation like India need to invest so much in space exploration? Isn't that money better invested in national development and poverty alleviation? And why did China, which was equally poor in the 20th century, invest so much capital in making its space program world class? Why is the Indian space program important, vital, critical for India? And let's also take up the questions of what is the space race 2.0? What is the great moon rush? Why are the major geopolitical players rushing back to the moon? What is India's current position in the space race? What does India need to do in space by 2050 to safeguard its national interests and cement its position as a major geopolitical power? To understand why the US, the USSR, China, and other nations have invested so much money into their space programs, and this also includes India, we must understand the hard political, military, economic, and geopolitical factors that drive space exploration. And the best way to do this is to examine the 20th century space race, which was an extension of the Cold War. The 20th century space race between the United States and the Soviet Union was driven by a complex interplay of political, military, and ideological factors. The Cold War was a political rivalry between the US and the USSR. It was marked by ideological differences, capitalism versus communism, and mutual suspicion. The development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, and nuclear weapons created a race for military supremacy. The Soviet Union's successful launch of Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite in 1957, challenged American technological superiority and led to a fear of Soviet dominance in space. They called this the Sputnik shock. Both nations quickly realized that space capabilities were linked to the development of ICBMs and missile development systems. Space offered a vantage point for reconnaissance via spy satellites, making it strategically important for military surveillance. Spy satellites provided the ability to monitor and gather intelligence on potential adversaries, and space capabilities were seen as a deterrent against potential military threats. The exploration of space gave rise to numerous scientific discoveries, knowledge, and technological advancements. Both countries sought to demonstrate their technological prowess by sending humans into space. So space achievements came to be seen as symbols of national power and prestige, with propaganda value on a global scale. But that was not all. Space exploration provided economic, technological, and industrial benefits. Investment in space technology stimulated economic growth and job creation in high tech industries. The space race led to the development of technologies with applications beyond space, benefiting various sectors. Spin off technologies included miniaturized electronics, microprocessors, water filtration systems, memory foam, MRI technologies, solar panels, cordless tools, GPS technology, fire resistant materials, medical monitoring devices, advanced aircraft designs, artificial limbs, environmental monitoring, and the list goes on and on. So, success in space had diplomatic and strategic implications too, impacting a nation's influence on the world stage. Space achievements could be used for diplomatic purposes and to gain allies during the Cold War. The US and the Soviet Union sought to prove the superiority of their respective political and economic systems through space achievements. The space race was viewed as an ideological battleground where communism and capitalism competed for dominance. China also sought to become a major world power, which explains why it invested so much into its space program in the 20th century. So the space race was driven by a combination of geopolitical rivalry, military considerations, scientific curiosity, economic interests, and the desire for national prestige. These factors converged to create a dynamic and highly competitive era of space exploration during the Cold War. Space exploration then took a backseat with the breakup of the USSR and the unipolar years between 1991 and 2017. But with the emergence of the multipolar era and the new Cold War 2.0, we are now witnessing the birth of a new space race. The moon, with its vast, pristine resources, is up for grabs. What resources does the moon have, you ask? So, first of all, there's water ice, which has been discovered in permanently shadowed craters near the moon's poles. It's a critical resource for life support, drinking water, oxygen, and can be broken down into hydrogen and oxygen for rocket fuel. So, it's an invaluable resource. Then we have the lunar soil, the regolith, which contains minerals like oxygen, silicon, aluminum, iron, and titanium. These materials could be used for construction, manufacturing, and life support systems. The lunar soil has an abundance of helium-3, which is a potential fuel for future fusion reactors, and it's very rare on Earth. Then some rare earth elements used in electronics and technology are also found in the lunar regolith. Platinum group metals such as ruthenium, rhodium, palladium, osmium, iridium, and platinum, which are used in various industrial applications, are also found in the lunar regolith. So the moon, with its huge untouched resources, is up for grabs. So is Mars. So space is the next frontier, just like the ocean was 5 centuries ago. In a few decades' time, every nation's economic, geopolitical, and military standing is going to be directly proportional to its capabilities in space. The 2 or 3 nations that will lead the world in space exploration in this century will be the nations that will write the future of human history. This brings us to India and ISRO. So ISRO has existed since 1962 and it has achieved a lot with very little resources. India is rightfully proud of ISRO's scientists and engineers. They serve the nation like few others can. Now, many of you will want to serve the nation in your own way. Some of you will want to join India's civil services, whether it's the IPS, the IAS, or the IFS. Lakhs of students want to crack the UPSC exam, but very few of them are able to succeed in this difficult task. Every year, only about 10% of the aspirants are able to clear the exam in their first attempt. And why is that? It's because they begin their UPSC preparation well in advance, and this saves 3 to 4 years of their life. If you want to take a head start in your UPSC preparation, then FEW OnlyIAS is a great solution. You can join their Prarambh 3-year program, which runs in parallel with the 3 years you spend in college. You can do the program while doing your college degree. The Prarambh 3-year program will make you UPSC ready and market ready by the time you acquire your college degree. The first year, Adarshila, will build up your UPSC basics with NCERT and GS and CSAT concepts. The second year, Agrim Padao, will advance your UPSC preparation by strengthening your GS and CSAT concepts along with optional. The third year, final Abhyas, will complete your syllabus and focus on rigorous practice and revision. From the market readiness perspective, you will learn personality development, chat GPT, and Microsoft Office skills in the first year. In the second year, the program will teach you job readiness and situation based skills so that you become market ready by the third year. The PW Only IAS 3-year UPSC Prarambh program is an affordable foundational course for cracking the UPSC exam. So if you want to prepare for the UPSC, the link is in the description and you can use the discount code ABPW for an additional discount. So, where does India stand in the space race 2.0? In the second quarter of 2023, the American company SpaceX lifted nearly 10 times as much mass to Earth orbit as its closest competitor, the nation of China. SpaceX lifts 79% of all mass to orbit. China lifts only about 11% of all mass to orbit, while ISRO lifts about 1% of all mass to orbit. From that perspective, ISRO is quite insignificant, considering the fact that rockets like the PSLV were designed with the purpose of providing affordable launch services to customers that would include other nations as well as private players. But even though it lags behind in the number of launches and the mass it launches, ISRO has given India the space launch capability that very few nations have. Without this capability, India would be dependent on nations like the US, Russia, and France for launching satellites and conducting space missions. This would have been a critical dependency, a geopolitical Achilles heel. And ISRO has had great success in the past. It has shown that it has the ability to do great things. It has developed successful rocket families like the ASLV, the PSLV, and the GSLV. Its Chandrayaan-1 mission, which discovered water on the moon, was a great success. ISRO became the first space agency to successfully send a spacecraft in Mars orbit on the first attempt with the Mangalyaan-1 mission in 2013. The Chandrayaan-2 mission was a partial success, and in 2 days' time, ISRO will attempt the Chandrayaan-3 landing. We hope it succeeds and it will be one step forward in a long and important journey. This is because the Chandrayaan-3 mission is part of the new space race and the Great Moon Rush, both of which are offshoots of the new Cold War, the Cold War 2.0, which is the emerging battle for supremacy between the old world order, the so-called rules-based world order, which is dominated by the US, and an alternate system, an alternate world order, which China and Russia would like to create. President Trump's trade war against China and the Ukraine war, which began in 2022, can be regarded to be the starting points of Cold War 2.0, and the competition is now moving into Africa. This is also manifesting itself in space. Every major geopolitical and space power is planning to return to the moon in this decade. The US plans to land humans on the moon in 2025. It plans to have yearly human landings on the moon by the end of this decade. China could also send humans to the moon in this decade, and Russia also has ambitious plans. There will most likely be permanent human settlements on the moon in the 2030s, and the first movers will eventually start claiming territories and resources on the moon at the first opportunity. This is why India cannot afford to be left behind in the space race. So, what does ISRO need to do to catch up with its competitors? Firstly, it needs to develop more powerful rockets, which will enable it to carry heavier payloads to Earth orbit and to reach the moon in 3 to 6 days instead of the 3 or so weeks it currently takes. Secondly, it needs to succeed in soft landing and roving on the moon. In other words, Chandrayaan-3 must succeed. Once this happens, there needs to be a repeat soft landing mission to cement the soft landing technology, and to possibly test a rover that survives on the moon for several months. The next phase should be lunar return spacecraft technology, which means spacecraft that successfully soft land on the moon and then take off again from the moon and return successfully to the Earth. Once this is successful, there should be one or two sample return missions. While this is happening, India needs to successfully achieve human spaceflight in Earth orbit, which is the Gaganyaan program. India will need to develop and perfect reusable rocket technology. Once these technologies are successfully developed and tested, India will be ready to build a space station in Earth orbit and to send astronauts to the moon by the 2030s. So, all of this may sound far fetched, but it could happen in the next 10 to 15 years. For it to happen, there needs to be political will and ambition. ISRO's budget will need to be augmented, and the scientists and engineers will need to be allowed to unleash their full potential. India has the talent and the potential and the resources to become a top 3 space power by 2047. All it will take is some political will and ambition. I am confident this will happen. In the meanwhile, best wishes to ISRO for the Chandrayaan-3 moon landing. I will cover this event live on Times Now. Do join me there. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.